JD Vance went on Joe Rogan and said it out loud. Elements within the Israeli government funded a covert influence campaign, targeting him personally, to kill the Iran deal and keep the war going. His message to those responsible? Go to hell. America first, not Israel first. A sitting vice president just said that about an ally. US Vice President JD Vance has launched one of his strongest public attacks yet on what he claims was an Israeli-backed campaign to undermine the Trump administration's efforts to end the war with Iran. Speaking on the Joe Rogan Experience, Vance accused elements within the Israeli government of funding a coordinated influence operation designed to derail the negotiations and keep the conflict going. Vance said the allegations were backed by a recent Time magazine investigation, which he claimed exposed a very discreet, extremely well-funded campaign, targeting him personally because of his role in negotiating last month's memorandum of understanding aimed at ending the Iran war.
There's this Time article that came out yesterday. A friend sent it to me. It's like worth reading because it lists a bunch of people who have quite literally been paid by a former Trump campaign person who was himself paid by certain elements within the Israeli government. And those people are attacking me viciously for quite literally trying to accomplish the negotiation objective that the president set for the country.
Notably, the Time report stated that former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale and his company, Clock Tower X, were hired last September through an advertising agency to run a pro-Israel influence campaign funded by the Israeli government. According to US Foreign Agents Registration Act filings cited by the magazine, the campaign was officially intended to combat rising anti-Semitism online. However, Time quoted an Israeli Foreign Ministry official as saying its actual objective was to prevent young conservative Americans from turning against Israel. The report also suggested that several conservative influencers involved in the campaign published coordinated criticism of the Memorandum of Understanding signed last month to end the Iran war. Parscale acknowledged that the campaign aimed to maintain support for Israel among young conservatives, but denied it was intended to undermine the administration's diplomacy. Vance, however, rejected that explanation.
Foreign governments try to influence the United States all the time. Israel does it, other countries do it. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. What bothers me is actually when Americans meaning American leadership, allows that influence to affect their judgment and to affect what they are advocating for. That's what really bothers me. People are always going to try to influence the United States of America, whether they're allies of ours or whether they're enemies of ours. But again, when I open up the pages of Time magazine and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing, and oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways, my response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first.
Vance went further, claiming he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that some individuals within the Israeli system were attempting to manipulate American public opinion to prolong the military campaign against Iran indefinitely. Despite those accusations, Vance rejected suggestions that Israel alone had driven the United States into the conflict. He said President Donald Trump independently believed Iran should never obtain a nuclear weapon, a position Vance said he also supports. Discussing the negotiations, the American vice president argued there remains a divide within Iran's leadership between pragmatists seeking an agreement with Washington and hardliners determined to continue confrontation. Vance's remarks mark one of the sharpest public criticisms yet from a senior member of the Trump administration towards elements within the Israeli establishment. As negotiations over Iran continue, his comments also expose growing tensions over whether diplomacy or military pressure should shape the next phase of US policy in the Middle East. after months of war and rising regional tensions, Donald Trump has delivered a message that could reshape Israel's military strategy: pull back. Axios reported that Donald Trump is pressing Israel to pull back from two of the region's most volatile front lines. According to the reports, Trump has personally urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to begin withdrawing Israeli forces from both Syria and Lebanon, adding fresh pressure on one of Israel's most consequential security policies. According to Axios, Trump made the request during a phone call with Netanyahu on Thursday. US and Israeli officials told the outlet Trump argued Israel's continued military presence in southern Syria risks fueling further instability and increasing the chances of a wider regional escalation. A US official quoted by Axios said Trump told Netanyahu,
"They don't want you there. You should redeploy."
The official added the president made the same point regarding Lebanon, urging Israel to reduce its military footprint there as well. The reported conversation came just one day after Trump met Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Turkey, as Washington continues efforts to reduce tensions across the region. Earlier on July 8th, at the NATO summit in Ankara, Trump said he had discussed a withdrawal with Netanyahu.
It's a big thing. First time in many years, right? So we have a deal with Israel and Lebanon, and they'll leave, and I think it's going to work out very well.
According to US officials cited by Axios, the Trump administration has spent months trying to broker a new security arrangement between Israel and Syria. The proposal reportedly included a gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces from Syrian territory occupied after the collapse of the Assad government in December 2024. However, those efforts have so far failed, with US officials believing Netanyahu is unwilling to make the concessions Washington has sought. The Israeli Prime Minister's office did not deny the conversation, but said Netanyahu had stressed Israel's need to maintain security zones along its borders. The issue extends beyond Syria. US mediators also met Israeli and Lebanese officials in Rome this week to discuss implementing a framework agreement under which Israel committed to withdraw from 2 pilot zones in southern Lebanon and allow the Lebanese military to deploy there. According to the report, Israel has yet to redeploy its forces from those areas. Israeli officials say they first want to verify that the zones are free of Hezbollah weapons and military infrastructure before any further withdrawals take place. Lebanese officials, however, argue that responsibility for making that assessment should rest with the US military. The White House declined to comment directly on the reported conversation, but did not dispute the account. A US official told Axios that President Trump remains committed to both Israel's security and efforts to achieve regional peace. As diplomatic efforts continue behind the scenes, Trump's reported intervention highlights growing American pressure to reduce military tensions in Syria and Lebanon, even as Israel continues to argue that its forward deployments remain essential to its national security.